The Agenda with Michael Knight on News Radio 560 KPQ and KPQ.com.
10 minutes past 1 o'clock, News Radio 560 KPQ. It's The Agenda. Let's meet our very special guest. He's Gordon Edgar, candidate for Douglas County prosecutor, and a man who used to sit at this microphone some years ago and do a talk show. So, Gordon, welcome back to KPQ.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Mike, for having me.
You're running for the candidate for Douglas County prosecutor.
Yes, sir.
And you're lucky in one respect.
I'm unopposed.
You're unopposed.
Unopposed.
But that doesn't make the office any less important to the people of the county.
No, it doesn't.
Let's describe what that office is like, in your view.
Well, sure. I've been a deputy prosecutor for 23 years for Douglas County and 2 years with Chelan County before that. So I have 25 years experience as a deputy prosecutor. Had the great opportunity of working for two really great bosses. Steve Clem for 23 years has been an excellent prosecutor for Douglas County. And then before that, Gary Reeson for Chelan County. And so I've had the opportunity to watch two great men serve in that position and serve with distinction. And I can say I've learned a lot from those gentlemen, and over the years, and I've been mainly criminal, but I have 23 years of proven experience in being a fair and I'll like to think impartial prosecutor who handles cases thoroughly and has developed a respect amongst the attorney corps and judges, as well as victims, witnesses, and might I even say defendants.
So criminal law is your background. As a prosecutor, that makes a lot of sense.
Well, that's one of the jobs of a prosecuting attorney, one of the sides. There's also the civil side. The county needs an attorney to help it defend and claims made against the county, to advise the county commissioners and the department heads, like the treasurer, the auditor, assessor, sheriff. So there are a lot of civil issues that the prosecutor has to deal with as well. And
do you give legal advice to the city or the county?
Only to the county. County is our only client, not the city. They have their own attorney.
Let's talk about your background. Where were you born?
I was born in Richland, Washington.
I know where that is.
Yeah. I'm a downwinder. I used to work at Hanford when I was in high school during the summers, and my father used to work at Hanford as well. He was military later on in life, and I graduated from Richland High School in '78. I spent 5 years in the Navy. Lived a little bit everywhere: California, Texas, Hawaii, Maine, Florida.
Where'd you live in Hawaii?
We lived on Oahu. First on Schofield Barracks, and then we moved off base into the town of Wahiawa.
Well, aloha.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a great place for a
I'll bet.
14, 15, and 16-year-old boy.
That's what you were in your teens when you were there?
I was in high school, yeah.
Oh, wow.
For 2.5 years of high school, yeah.
Excellent.
And then we moved back to Richland. I finished up there.
Yeah, you can jump in the ocean here. It's just not quite the same.
Not the same.
What made you fall in love with the law? What made you follow that line of passion?
I can't say. I can't say that there was a hero in mind. I can say growing up, I don't recall ever meeting an attorney. The only attorneys I ever saw were the ones on TV. But there came a point in time when I was in the Navy, as I was getting out, contemplating what I wanted to do in life, and it just dawned on me that I would like to go to law school. And so I finished up my education, got a bachelor's degree in American Studies, which is useless for anything but going to law school. And then I went to Lewis and Clark Law School in Portland, Oregon, and that was graduated back in 1991, and never looked back, and I've loved my experience in the law.
And when you passed the bar, what did you do?
I worked for 2 years with a local law firm in civil practice, and I'll say that it wasn't my passion, and so I ended up then going to the Chelan County Prosecutor's Office for 2 years, did a lot of juvenile casework, and then a position opened up in Douglas County, and Steve Clem gave me a call and asked if I wanted to come on over, and I've been there for 23 years.
It doesn't surprise me that you did a talk show here on KPQ some time ago, because if you want to be in the kind of law you're practicing, you have to, one, know the law, and two, you have to express it verbally in court to convince a judge, convince a jury, convince anyone.
Well, as a deputy prosecutor, I've had lots of court experience. I've had close to 100 trials and numerous motions, bench trials. And so when you just talk about communicating, I'm in court a lot, and criminal attorneys are, whether you're a public defender or a prosecutor, you're just in court a lot, so you're constantly reviewing the law, the court rules. You're interviewing people. You're in front of the judge. You're in front of juries. You're in front of a court of appeals, and occasionally in front of the state Supreme Court. So you're always communicating, always articulating your position, defending your position. And so, unlike a lot of civil attorneys can spend an entire career and never see the inside of a courtroom. But as a deputy prosecutor, I've been blessed with the opportunity to be in court a lot.
And even though you didn't know an attorney growing up, that's a place that you feel comfortable, obviously.
I love it.
Yeah.
It's great.
There's something about thinking on your feet that gives a lawyer probably no fear of proceeding in certain cases. You have to you have to not always know the answer ahead of time and proceed as if you got a free ride. Well,
I would like to think that I will not ask the question that I do not know the answer to.
It's supposed to be a bad idea.
That's a bad idea. It's advice not to really think on your feet and speak on your feet. Really, an attorney should be thoroughly aware of all the facts of the case. Certainly, there are times when a witness is on the stand and something comes out that you did not anticipate. And of course, you better be ready to roll with it. But for the most part, if you're doing your homework, you know what the witnesses are going to say.
What do you think of the jury system, having argued before it so many times? Have you always gotten a fair shake from the jury, do you think?
Always. I will say that juries always make the right decision in that you have 6 or 12 people, depending on which court you're in, who hear the facts. They don't know the law. They're lay people sitting in that jury box, and you're relying on their experience just as members of the community to come up with the right decision. And they are tasked with coming up with the right decision based on limited knowledge. Really, they don't know who the witnesses are. They don't know their full backgrounds. They don't know what the law is. They rely on the judge and the attorneys to express the law to them. And so that cross-section of the community takes this job very seriously. And when I say they always come up with the right decision, it's based on the information that's in front of them. The other reason I like the jury system is it brings the government, if you will, back to the people. And I think it's vitally important for jurors in the community to know what's happening in the courthouse, to know what the police are doing, to know what the attorneys are doing, to know what the judges are doing. And for the most part, people don't know that unless they sit in that jury box or they sit in the gallery of the courthouse and watch. If they're relying on the knowledge they obtain from newspapers or radio reporting or TV reporting to know what's going on in the courthouses, they're woefully underinformed. But you get the police having to check in, the prosecutors having to check in with the people. Here's the case. Here's what we did. Here's what we think the violation of the law is, and you tell us, did we do a good job? Did we do the right thing? And jurors will, I won't say they're ruthless, but they let you know with their decision whether it's guilty or not guilty, and sometimes you get to talk to them afterwards, most times not. But nevertheless, you work hard on a case, and you find out the answer. And what it brings a lot of humility because, again, it brings the power back to the people and holds the government, the police, the prosecutors accountable for what's going on out in the community.
And after the story is told in court, you can probably have what, in terms of legal argument, is a great argument, but you realize that the jury's not buying it. That must be a sinking feeling for a defense attorney.
Well, sometimes you just have to go with what you have as a defense attorney. Your client comes to you who they are, the facts are what they are, and the best that you are, the best attorneys are going to come up with a big zip.
Doesn't always sell.
It doesn't always sell. The one good thing about going to the jury trial is it really forces you to focus, narrow cases down to the issues, and to figure out, I won't say how to sell it, because you're not trying to sell it, but you're trying to relate to the jury, you're trying to relate to the community. And again, that's another good reason for going to trial a lot is you get a sense of who your community is, who they are, what's important to them. And I can go to my officers a lot of times. I'll get a case and they'll say, oh, let's do this. And I'll say, you know what? This is what we need. This is what the jurors in our community want. And if you don't go to trial a lot, you don't know that.
That's right. You don't know the ropes in the community.
Correct.
I had two lawyers talk as if I wasn't in the room once about how cases that they argue, they were both defense attorneys, get smaller and smaller as it goes through all the elements of the case, the discovery, the pre-trials, the depositions, all the things that happen, getting closer and closer to trial time. By the time you get to trial, what you thought was an expansive case with several points that all had to be made shrinks down to maybe one element.
Sure, one or two issues.
And does that always happen?
Most of the time it does, even in criminal matters. You really try to narrow it down to some very clear issues, very succinct issues, and not very many issues. You start getting too expansive, and you're going to lose the jury after a while. I won't say get confused, but it's easy for them to get lost. And remember, these attorneys have had months and months and hours to get familiar with a case, and you're asking 6 or 12 people in a few hours
to absorb it all.
It's like drinking from a fire hose. And if you're going to do the system justice, and if you're going to treat those jurors with respect, you're going to narrow down the issues.
Let's talk about the environment you work in Douglas County, the people that you work with, the courts, the clerks, the whole operation. Mm-hmm. What's it like going to work there every day?
It's a great crew all around, from the judge to the court clerks to the deputy prosecutors in my office, my staff, as well as everybody else in the county that we work with, the department heads, everybody that works for the department heads, the county commissioners, the transportation staff, the road crews. I can tell you, Douglas County is just a pleasure to work for, and I love going to work. And we have a lot of great people there.
When you do go to work, are you past the point where you can understand how important that the cases are? Have you gotten used to it? Or you gotten hardened to that job? Or do you still feel the emotion and what's at risk in every case?
A little bit of everything.
I bet.
Me personally, I get worked up about a case. I'll get passionate about it. I'll get white-knuckled. I'll be venting. The vein on my forehead will be popping out. And that's why we have other people that we work with who help me get perspective on a case, help me bring it back down. Now, do I get jaded? Sure, I get jaded.
Of course you do. Everybody does.
Same case over and over again. So a lot of the same defendants over and over again. Just wondering, what's it going to take to solve this problem? And let me tell you a quick little story about an experience I had many, many years ago. And I was doing juvenile court work, and it was just a very intense time frame. And another local attorney said, "Hey, let's go to a high school basketball game." And I didn't have kids at the time. So we go to this high school basketball game at Wenatchee, and I'm looking around. And the attorney asked me, "What are you looking in for?" And I said, "Well, I don't see any kids I recognize." And he looked at me and said, "Gordy, most kids are good kids." And so it made me realize that my focus was very narrow, and that I should not allow that to color the rest of the community, if you will. And so do I get jaded, and do I think that do I have a lot of conspiracy theories about what's going on? Sure. But like I said, I have a lot of great coworkers, a lot of friends who are not in the prosecutor's office, and it helps keep me grounded.
When you threw your hat in the ring to be the Douglas County prosecutor, did you know you were going to be unopposed?
I did not.
Wow.
You never know. I had a few attorneys call me or drop by my office 6-8 months ago. "Hey, what are your plans?" And that's always code for they're thinking about it too. And so it wouldn't have surprised me if somebody had filed. Personally, I'm glad they did not. I would like to think that it's a reflection on what other people think of my performance in the office.
Indeed.
And that it reflects well on me.
What's the next big step if you're elected? What would you do the next day?
What would I do the next day? It's a great question, and it's something that I'll be spending the next 6 months working with Steve Clem, speaking with the department head, the county commissioners, and figuring out what the answer to that question will be. There's no glaring problem. There's no big pressing issue right now. It's not like I'm running against somebody who needs to get out and they've done something wrong. I've worked with Steve for 23 years. We've developed a great collegiality, and everything that's going on in that office has been developed with a lot of input in mind, mine included. Steve is the boss, but still he respects others' opinions. And so when we've developed a way to look at cases, which ones to file and which ones not, and how to proceed, how to look at the big picture, a lot of what's already going on is already a lot of who I am.
When you look at a case that doesn't get filed, what makes you decide on that? Because it seems like is that a rarity to look at a whole case and say, you know what, I don't think so?
Not at all. It's not a rarity at all. We look at the reports that come in initially. Then we'll discuss it amongst the office. We'll call the officer or the detective if there's more information that we need, if they need to look at more documentation, if they need to go out and speak to more witnesses. And so we'll look at all of the information. If we need more, we'll get more. There's sometimes that a case, it's not a matter of what we think happened. It's a matter of what we can prove in court. And sometimes we look at what we have, who the witnesses are, what kind of evidence we have, the strength of the evidence. And that's one of the benefits of having gone to trial a lot, going to court a lot. We can look at a case with fair amount of confidence and say, this is not something that we want to take all the way to trial or that we have enough to get a conviction on. And so then we'll have that hard discussion with the victims, with the officers, and if something new comes along, certainly we'll take a look at it. But every case stands on its own, and not all cases that come in that are referred to us result in charges.
What do you think the people of Douglas County want from a prosecutor? Do they really understand the job well enough to articulate what they would like to see from a prosecutor?
I think the community wants someone who has proven experience, who's going to work hard, who's going to be thorough, who's going to be fair, who's going to be impartial, and that if that person respects the community, respects the law, and works hard, I think the community is going to respect the work product of the prosecutor.
Is it fair to say that a prosecuting attorney and a defense attorney have the same job at one point, and that is to serve justice and not just to serve their client?
It is, and I'll tell you what, our legal community in Douglas County and in the Wenatchee Valley is a very collegial community, at least from my perspective with the criminal defense bar. Of course, there's going to be some heated discussions, some heated phone calls and emails, but at the end of the day, we are all working for the same thing, and that is that justice is done. Now, from the defense attorney side, their definition of justice is to help their client avoid as much legal impact as possible. But in one of the ways the defense bar does it is they, for example, come time for trial, they're going to thoroughly examine a police officer,
sure.
His knowledge of the law, the thoroughness of his investigation. And what I have found when a defense attorney is doing his or her job very well, and they're scrutinizing my officers and deputies very well, my officers and deputies come out better for it. They realize, oh, boy, I could have done a better job here. I could have asked more questions. I could have whatever. And so I get I like to think that I get better officers at the end of a trial than when they went going into the trial. And so in that sense, the defense bar has helped justice be served. From my standpoint, I like to think that I'm just as hard on my officers as the defense bar. And there's quite a few officers, when they call me, they're not going to get a rubber stamp. I will ask them some very hard questions. I'll ask them for more information, and it'll be in a nice way, I hope. We'll go over the law, and we'll. I like to think that I'm helping the officers be better officers, and so when everybody does their job right, the defense attorneys, the prosecutors, and the judges, we all have an eye towards doing the same thing, and that is serving justice in our community.
You find that you turn around and see pretty much an empty courtroom when there's an important case going on, and in the sense that people can come in and watch justice at work. They rarely do. Most people if they don't have to go to a courthouse, don't go to the courthouse for anything. I'm not saying this is recreation, but in terms of your civic curiosity, there are court cases going on that can be viewed. Do most people not watch them, or
that's exactly the case? Absolutely. Most courtrooms during trials have very few people in them. Right. The defendant's family, maybe a couple of friends, the victim's family, maybe. Maybe there's been a couple of cases that have garnered high media attention where there's reporters and there's, people looking on. But that's 99.9% of the case. That's not the situation.
I'm not suggesting it's theater or entertainment, but at the same time, it is something that the civic entity is conducting in public. If anyone wants to see it.
Oh yeah. Occasionally we get people who, will say, "Hey, are you here for court?" No, I'm just observing. That's rare.
That is rare.
Rare. And I'll say that as far as the press is concerned as well. I'll have reporters call me after the fact. "Hey, what happened in court?" Fine, I'll be glad to talk to them. But in terms of reporters sitting in the courtroom and doing the courtroom sketches and taking notes, that doesn't happen.
Doesn't happen anymore.
No.
There was a writer in New York named Damon Runyon that was famous for his courtroom accounts, where he would describe what everyone was wearing very accurately, and by just the description of what they were wearing, we would understand who these people were. It was really quite fascinating. It was a technique that he used over and over again.
Yeah, no, there's no courtroom media anymore. Occasionally, like I said, occasionally on high-profile.
Has to be a pretty good-sized case.
Yes.
And even then, it's limited, or maybe no television or cameras.
Correct. Well, yeah, that's.
In fact, if you had to argue that before a judge, what would you argue to keep the press out of the courtroom?
Oh, no. There's some very clear guidelines on the courtrooms being open, and that's the end of the discussion. They are open.
Period.
We can't close them. Now, when the media comes in, they have to be respectful of the courtroom itself, and the press have to talk to the judge about, if I can have cameras, where can I put the cameras? And the judge will, for the most part, will say, well, yeah, you can have cameras, but they can't have lights on them. You can't, be talking while court's going on. You can't. Some judges will say you can't point the camera at the victim or the witnesses or whatever.
Right. Some restrictions.
There's going to be restrictions to keep proper decorum in the courtroom, but for the most part, reporters are going to be, if they want to be in the courtroom, they're in the courtroom. It's open.
And after a while, do you find that the people stop seeing the camera, that they don't play to the camera?
It's been very rare that cameras have been in the courtroom, and so I haven't noticed any theatrics, so that hasn't been an issue in my career.
We have an election coming. You're running, but you're not opposed by anyone. That's probably good. But still, would you mind asking the people of Douglas County for their vote?
I would be glad to. I have 25 years of experience as a deputy prosecutor, 27 as an attorney. I've done a great job, I would like to think. I've earned the respect of judges, defense attorneys, law enforcement, and a lot of other people in my career. And I've truly enjoyed being a deputy prosecutor, and I'd love to take that next step. And I respect the will of the people. I would respect their vote. I would ask for it. And please vote for me, even though I'm unopposed. And I know a lot of people don't vote when it comes to unopposed candidates, but I'd sure love it if